Well, Laura, what do you think? I mean, obviously this is a second Fight Island run, and people are getting used to it now. What's the biggest challenge you think for these fighters as they come here? Traveling, most of them obviously fighting in the middle of the night. What is the biggest challenge?
Sleep, 100% sleep. I think that was maybe overlooked a little bit last time in terms of when people were analyzing certain performances. The sleep is a real factor. Got two people that I'm close with out here, Jonathan Martinez and James Krause, so I'm kind of very aware of how they're dealing with those things, and it's not easy. Like, it's a daily conversation of, now, are you sure I should be trying to go to bed here? And but what about this? And, you're never awake when the sun is up if you're trying to stay on U.S. time, trying to work out when you think you might be fighting. It's a tricky thing. And then for me, I'm kind of doing the same thing, although obviously not fighting. I have to be somewhat on and, able to form a sentence at some point.
I get it. No,
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. Do you think that'll change it all for the pay-per-view next week, which is more like a traditional time? Do you think it'll be easier for those fighters?
I do, yeah. I think the closer that you can be to, it is really hard to fight nature when you're here. Like, my room is so bright I don't even know what time it was, but I was trying to go to sleep and my room was just bright, and I'm like piling shirts on top of my face and stuff. So I think, yeah, the closer you are to actually fighting at a time that would be normal to this location, the easier it's going to be on fighters for sure.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Well, this week we've got, obviously, Ortega and Zombie. Everybody's looking forward to this main event. From your point of view, what's the most intriguing aspect of it? Because there's a lot of storyline built into it, but
Sure.
it's also just technically a great matchup as well. So what's the most exciting part for you?
It's an amazing matchup, and I think for me the biggest thing with these two guys is the X factors. I love a fight where we already know what we're going to get from these guys to a degree just because of the styles that we have come to know them by over the years. Zombie coming forward, Ortega with just that ridiculous jiu-jitsu, so much power in his hands. But they both have been inactive to varying degrees, and especially Brian Ortega. When a guy's out that long, you have no idea what tool set he's been able to create in the meantime. Now, I know he's been dealing with injuries and stuff, but he comes from a great camp. I actually sat next to his striking coach on the way over here, so I had a lot of time to chat. And I think we're going to see an even improved Brian Ortega on the feet. And Zombie, obviously, we know he has a danger factor anywhere this fight goes. I do think he, in terms of just stylistic matchup, he's dangerous everywhere. But I think he's going to try to keep it on the feet, and I just can't wait to see it. I like Brian Ortega on so many levels, and I'm excited to see him back. I'm kind of a jiu-jitsu nerd, so I like that type of fight. And there are so few fighters that when they jump guard, I'm like, yes, this is getting exciting. He just jumped, who does that, right? Like in MMA, we tend to, someone does that, we're like, oh, what a pussy, Not when Brian Ortega does it. He's about to do something crazy cool. So I'm pumped for that fight.
I love it. I want to ask you about a women's matchup, Jessica Andrade, Caitlin Chukagian. It's like a key one. I feel like it's flying under the radar. People aren't talking about it much. What do you think lies in that matchup? Because it seems like a big one.
Well, I think, obviously, Chukagian, she's got such amazing length on Andrade, and she's going to really, really need to use those lead weapons to keep the distance here, keep the wrestling away. But, again, hits the canvas. She's got some pretty slick jiu-jitsu moves as well. I think Andrade, has learned a lot from the setbacks that she's had in recent years. And if we see her come out and move a little bit more fluidly, cut more angles, work on that footwork, I think that this is going to be, it's another very, very intriguing matchup. And again, like you said, not one that people are talking about maybe as much as they should be.
Yeah. Last one for me. Any other names, whether it be a matchup or somebody's story or something that stands out to you that maybe people should be looking out for on this card?
Well, I got to give a shout out to my boy, James Krause. He's obviously been one of my best friends for 13 years. And to me, he's a guy who flies under a lot of radar because he doesn't fight super frequently, but that's only because he's coaching 13 UFC fighters. I think he's just now starting to get his due as a coach. Maybe not quite yet from everybody, but people are starting to pay attention to the coaching. And I hope I'm not saying anything I'm not supposed to, but really the only reason he took this fight when he did is because he looked at his schedule the rest of the year, and he never wants to take away from the fighters at our gym and the fighters that he coaches. So he's like, man, my November's packed. I've got Megan, in December. If I don't fight now, I'm not going to fight. So hey, Jason, I need to fight now. And so for him to be able to step up on last minute notice, and I expect really, really good things from him in this fight.
You talked about how excited you are when like Brian Ortega pulls guard.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, Korean Zombies hit a lot of like 10th Planet style stuff. So
Yeah.
do you view this as a stylistic matchup in terms of jiu-jitsu?
Oh, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that as much, but yes, yeah, I think it will be a really intriguing battle because, just outside of this fight, in the jiu-jitsu culture, that's kind of like a dividing line, right? Like, are you traditional Gracie BJJ or are you that 10th Planet? Sometimes 10th Planet kind of gets, I don't want to say maybe looked down upon by the die-hard traditional jiu-jitsu players, but it's clearly effective. Casey Halstead's daughter rolled through Kansas City. I think she's like 19 or 20. She's been doing it since she was, out of the womb basically, and she's a smaller. I think she would fight at 105 if she fought, and so I rolled with her. And man, I forget how different that 10th Planet stuff can be, and like just the way that they move, where they put their legs, especially that high guard, and just it's really unusual stuff. Obviously, I'm sure Brian has seen all of that, but yeah, you bring up a really good point. That's going to be fun to watch, kind of the battle of styles.
But when we see these like two grapplers face each other, it usually kind of turns into a striking battle.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, is that what you're expecting too? And who do you think holds the advantage if it doesn't go to the ground?
I think if you had to, if we were doing one of those breakdowns where you just asking me purely who has the striking advantage, I'm gonna say Korean Zombie does, but I do think Brian Ortega has, just a ton of power. He's shown that, right? Like, I think that Zombie has a style that's really, really difficult for people to deal with, and he can do some really unusual things in there. And not many people, if you haven't faced someone who just continues to come forward consistently, it can be really, really frustrating to figure out, like, why are my punches not affecting him in any way, shape, or form? And it can be kind of, a mind F, for lack of a better term. I probably should find a more eloquent way to put that. But I give Zombie the edge a little bit in striking, but that's not to say that Brian Ortega should be slept on. And again, he's been gone so long. We don't really know what he's bringing to the table in the striking department in this fight, because it's a long time to be away sharpening your tools.
When you mentioned the 105-pound division, do you think UFC needs to hop on that?
I do. I do. I'm probably going to get all sorts of flack for saying this, but I think the UFC has proven that women's MMA is a very good business to be in. I think that the featherweight division is exciting in its own right because you get big punchers and you get big finishes, and you have Amanda Nunes. Who doesn't want to see Amanda Nunes fight no matter what weight class it is? But I will say that if you're looking to tap into markets like China, like the rest of Asia, there are a lot of atomweight women over there, a lot. And there are a lot in the United States as well. I think that there's a handful of girls that fight at strawweight in the UFC that are much better suited to be atomweights. I know Loma Lookboonmee has put on some muscle and obviously doing good things at strawweight, but she's a natural atomweight. Jessica Pena used to be atomweight. Michelle Watterson used to be atomweight. I don't know if Michelle Watterson can make atomweight anymore because she's stacked. But and there's a whole crew of really talented women coming up through Invicta, and I love Invicta, right? Like, that's my home. That's where I got my start. But part of the reason why I didn't continue with my fighting career is because that would have been the pinnacle, and that was not enough for me, financially, and just in terms of, like, if I'm going to dedicate my life to something after having a child, it's got to be like a big thing. I want to be able to justify spending 6 hours a day away from my kid. And for me personally, potentially being the atomweight champion of Invicta was just not enough reason for me to do that. So yeah, like I have a real personal burning desire to see the atomweights. There are more of them than people realize. I actually think it's a much easier division to keep filled up than featherweight is. There's just more. I think they're really exciting fighters. And I need to go back and look at the stats, but last time I looked, there are a surprising number of finishers. You're not going to see a ton of one-punch knockouts, but Loma Lookboonmee is an excellent example. I want to see that girl fight every time she fights. I remember watching her in Invicta flying teep kick this chick across the octagon, and like the girl literally like flew in the air, and I want to say her back like hit the side, and I whipped out my phone. Shannon's gonna kill me, but I whipped out my phone. I was like, Mick, you need to be watching this fight right now. This is why you need atomweights in the UFC, because it is exciting. It's like the flyweights of women. They're fast and they're fun to watch. So I could keep talking about that for too long. Sorry.
Hey, Laura.
Hey.
What's the most significant thing you took away from the fighter meetings today?
The fighter meetings? I was not part of the fighter meetings. I was not. I wish I could give you some insight there. When I come here for quick hits, I'm kind of under a different column in the UFC. So I'm not technically with the broadcast team. I'm on the social team. So I was not a part of those, but I would have given you an amazing insight had I been.